College Football Enquirer with Ross Dellenger and Steven Godfrey. I am Andy Staples. And guys, we have ourselves a national championship game. Indiana-Miami. It's a home game for Miami. Nobody tell Vegas because Indiana was a 7.5-point favorite when this matchup was set. As we're recording this, that line has moved to 8.5. Not a lot of faith in the Canes from Vegas or the money early on.
Imagine being told 2 years ago after Indiana finished, I think 5-7, maybe
3-9.
Tom, was it 3-9? Holy cow! Imagine being told that Indiana would be playing for the national championship 2 years later and be an 8.5-point favorite, playing in their opponent's home field. It really is hard to wrap your mind completely around it. It really is, which is why a lot of people, a lot of opponents, as you guys have both probably heard, in seen maybe from a column that ran Monday from one of the former members of this pod, Pat Forty, why many opponents are accusing Indiana of doing some other things, because surely this can't happen. This can't be happening if they're playing by the rules. So
it can't be that they're just better, that Curt Cignetti's just a better coach, and that he's developed a better roster, and that, no, that can't.
Boys, nobody beats the Crimson Tide that way without getting an assistance.
I love it, and it's funny because now Oregon's like the old line. Like, Oregon has moved from the disruptor. Oregon's no longer the disruptor. Oregon's now the establishment, and so
yes,
when
Mark
Indiana
Cuban
beats,
in Indiana.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, Mark Cuban's been an Indiana alum for a long time. Now we're just now talking about him helping fund the roster.
Yeah, apparently, yeah.
And who cares?
Boy.
Because Phil Knight's still way richer than him, and it didn't help. So maybe that's not it. Maybe Curt Cignetti's just good. But yes, I do love that everybody has now decided, it can't possibly be on the up and up. That is college football in a nutshell. And I remember being at Steven Godfrey's alma mater, Ole Miss, on the National Signing Day when they signed that class. It included Laramie Tunsil and Laquan Treadwell and all that bunch. And they let me in bed, and I was in the war room, and they knew it. Like, all the coaches were joking about it. They're like, we're going to get investigated for this class. Well, I mean, they also knew what they did. But
guess what?
But they correctly pointed out that if Alabama signed a class like that, or if Ohio State signed a class like that, nobody would say boo. But you're not allowed if you're not in the club already. And Indiana's definitely not in the club.
I love every bit of this. College football hates a usurper, and it's probably the thing that I hate the most about college football. My old podcast co-host, Bill Connolly, coined that. They hate a usurper. They can't stand it. It drives them nuts. I guarantee you, if you go to some tailgate right now at Auburn or LSU or Florida, they'll still complain that Boise's got blue turf and they don't belong. I'm not kidding. In the year of our Lord 2026, that still bothers people.
The best part of all this is we just spent 15 years with everybody saying, this sport is getting so boring. It's just Alabama or Ohio State or Clemson or Georgia, and that's it, and nobody else has a chance. Why can't we get the rules changed so somebody else can have a chance? Guess what? They changed the rules. Well, somebody else has a chance now, and they're complaining about that.
Hang on. Let's not do the editorial we is very tricky here, okay?
That's true.
We are celebrating
the royal they. Yeah.
Yes. The SEC network's having a tough time right now. The SEC media is they're having a hard one, and the larger fan bases at the traditional helmet schools are having a tough time coping with this. They're in the Big Ten. I don't know if it's as pronounced necessarily. Michigan's kind of been busy in their own house the last couple of weeks or so. Ohio State fans,
they're not really looking out.
Yeah, you still might want to clean up some things inside. Ohio State fans, it's almost too large of a fan base to characterize one particular sentiment. But by and large, what you're seeing are a bunch of butthurt Alabama fans and a lot of SEC incredulity, again, at a program like Indiana doing this. And there's some interesting and I think very intelligent conversations to be had about this, because we are now playing a third national title game with no SEC participant. Last year was an independent against the Big Ten, and then the year before, depending on how how stupid you want to get. It was either the Pac-12 against the Big Ten or the Big Ten against the Big Ten, however you want to decide, how to phrase that. So 3 years is that's not an aberration. That's not an outlier. We are looking at something that's trending. And Andy, I've brought it up on the show before. Your colleague at On3, Mr. Steve Wiltfong, you actually, I called you because I was looking for a quote on a story I was working on, and he has said for a while that the combination of NIL and the portal would better benefit some non-Southern schools. Now, the idea that it would benefit Indiana, and the idea that it would benefit Indiana to this level, this quickly, I don't think any of us could have prognosticated. That's what's happening here deserves a little incredulity, but in a positive way. I think it's a great story.
It's a fantastic story. And when you look at, again, the changes, Andy mentioned it, like forever, so many people have wanted the system to be shook up and let other programs sort of end this thing. We went for so many years with the dominance of the SEC, and then the Alabama Clemson thing, and you just wanted like a shakeup of that, and we've got it. And as we've discussed on this pod for a while now, like you had the transfer portal and the freedom to move has helped, and obviously the NIL with everybody paying has helped as well. And it's pretty clear that we've sort of entered a new era where there's just about as much parity as there's ever been. Maybe there's ever been in college football. And if Indiana wins, I know we've talked about this too, it will break that 29-year streak of a first-time national champion, which is to me pretty evident in this new era, and sort of gives you an idea of how different things are, that you could have 3 decades go by without a first-time national champion.
By the way, the world didn't end. Yeah, the world hasn't ended. It's fine. It's probably good for the sport.
No, everything's going pretty good. Yeah,
it's actually pretty fine. Yeah. And if you want to be one of those people that, like you SEC fans are really fond of their television ratings. The New Year's Day slate of playoff games, the lowest overall rating was the SEC on SEC game in the Sugar Bowl, even in prime time. Ole Miss versus Georgia. So diversity is good in college football. It's totally great that we have new helmets and new things happening, and we're not just talking about how great Nick Saban and the Tad are, or some school that basically Xeroxed the Nick Saban blueprint, like in Athens. This is all good. This is all fine.
Well, and that's why
I would like a closer game, but because I'm predicting a blowout, but that's about it.
Well, let's talk about the game itself, because I think a lot of people are predicting a blowout. I think people have watched Indiana just roll over everybody. And now I will say that they have done that in the playoff. They crushed Alabama, then they crushed Oregon. They did not do that all season. They did crush Illinois. They had games where they were just dominant, but they struggled against Iowa. They struggled against Penn State, took an incredible drive to like the Charlie Becker
opener.
And Omar
Andy.
Yeah. Old Dominion, Ricky Ronnie and company getting after it.
Watch out now. Best program in Virginia.
Now, is Indiana playing its best football right now? Yes, they are. Have they? And that's part of what makes these guys so awesome is they've been able to ramp this up, and they've not let. Like, they didn't let kicking the crap out of Alabama change their prep for Oregon. I talked to Indiana players about this in the locker room after they beat Oregon. I said, how do you do this? How do you flush what just happened? Because that's the hardest thing in college football, is to be consistent and to perform consistently day after day, not just in the games, but in practice too. And a lot of it is, I think, there's some old guys on this team that set the tone. Carter Smith, their left tackle, who was an Indiana signee. He was an inherited player. That he didn't come with Cignetti. He was a Tom Allen signee that they inherited. Pat Coogan, their center, different circumstances. He played 4 years at Notre Dame. He started at center for Notre Dame in the national championship game last year. But he's also been around a culture that knows how to prepare and win games like this. And so he comes in and he can tell the younger players what to do. Fernando Mendoza, he's been at Cal. He's been, he's seen it from a different perspective. All the guys that played for Cignetti at JMU. So that would be, your Aiden Fisher, the linebacker. That would be Mikhail Kamara, the edge rusher. That, Elijah Surratt, the receiver. Like those guys, from the moment they set foot on campus at JMU, were imbued with this very process-oriented. We are going to think about this play and this day, and that is it. We're not worried about the scoreboard. We're just going to dominate this thing in front of us. And they're really good at that. They're really freaking good at that. And guys, if we just compare potential NFL draft picks here, Indiana has just as many for this year's draft as Miami. Now, Miami may have some younger guys that maybe project higher, like Malachi Toney. But, for every Francis Mauigoa, there's a Carter Smith. For every Ruben Bain, there's a Tyreek Tucker, Mikhail Kamara. Or in every Akeem Messidor, there's a Tyreek Tucker. This is a fun matchup. This is a fun matchup.
Andy being a former lineman too, this is a clash of, maybe the two best offensive lines that we've seen in college football, especially this year. A lot of them are transfers, especially on the Miami side. I think went out and got some of the best linemen and brought them in, and they've just been really, really good. Right? They can run the ball and they protect the quarterback really, really well.
Yeah, it's great, and it's an interesting mix because. Like Mauigoa is a guy who signed out of high school with Miami, who's a prized recruit. James Brockermeyer, their center at Miami, started his career at Alabama and then played for TCU, and now he's finishing up at Miami. I mentioned Carter Smith was a original Indiana signee, and then you have Coogan and you have their left tackles in Mikowski who was at Ohio State. I'm sorry, the right tackle. So they've got an interesting mix, but yes. Both are so solidly constructed up front on both sides of the line of scrimmage. And that, Godfrey, you mentioned you got an interesting question on Yahoo Sports Daily when you were on with them. What did they ask you?
So Fitz and Caroline, I think just honestly to kind of break up what has felt like a little bit of monotony in the last two Indiana games, just asked for a scenario in which Miami is competitive and or pulls off the upset. Which is insane to say. It's the only thing more insane to talk about an Indiana-Miami national title in football is that, oh man, can you fabricate a scenario in which Miami can just stay in the game? It's kind of insane to say.
I don't even need to fabricate one. I don't.
Well, so what I started with was some of us have predicted a Carson Beck breakdown. That hasn't happened. I think if he's so, I kind of pulled this out of the rear on the fly, but I said let's stay mistake free in the Carson Beck game. All right, let's also involve the exceptional talent because I think you're right. It's a more balanced talent matchup than people realize. But let's not kid ourselves. If you can put someone like Malachi Toney in open space and create those like game breaking moments. That's one way to stay alive. And then I said, hey, Ruben Bain needs to be involved. The game plan that we talked about, where he was sort of not neutralized or answered by Ole Miss, he just didn't necessarily apply to the kind of pass rush.
He was neutralized.
I didn't want to go that far, but it was also that you. But, we also said going into the Ole Miss game, you didn't want to over-pursue someone like Chambliss because teams had made that mistake earlier in the season, and that's when things break down. He runs around, does a lot of nonsense like he did in the Sugar Bowl. I think you have to put pressure on Mendoza, and they have the ability to do that. They also have the ability to put a hat on the hat in the run game. So that's where I started. Mm-hmm. Now you can now finish the homework for me.
Well, and I think you're right on that. So the game that Miami has to play is the Ohio State game and the Texas A&M game again. The only thing they need to add to both of those. So if you watch the Texas A&M Miami game, that's a 10-3 game that Miami wins in College Station, where they dominate defensively. They tried to get somewhat cute offensively, but in a very very risk averse way. Like, it's the most risk-averse cute you ever saw. It's basically try to force the ball into Malachi Tony's hands without trying to throw it deep downfield. Ohio State, also a very risk-averse game plan where they dominated up front. That's how you win. But you have to take a couple more risks. You'll have to take some downfield shots, and Carson Beck's going to have to connect on them. That is how you win the game, because I do think Miami's good enough to do it. To your point about Mendoza, this is where it gets interesting, because Miami had Marcel Reed against Texas A&M, who was a dangerous runner. They sacked him 7 times. Ole Miss much smarter about it. Like, did not allow Trinidad Chambliss to sit in the pocket and be a target. And even though he's a good runner, they made sure he got the ball out. And he's smart enough with the ball that he was going to put it on somebody, and they were still going to be able to gain yards. Mendoza's more dangerous than both of them, because I had somebody who was involved with the 2019 LSU team. So I wouldn't be saying this if it hadn't been someone who was there for all of it who said this to me, because I wouldn't have believed it. The person goes, watching Mendoza the other night, he's got a little Joey in him. Referring to Joe Burrow.
Ooh, the highest of compliments, because the media hits I've been doing, Andy, everyone says if Indiana rolls, compare them to 2019 pre-portal, pre-NIL LSU. That's like the default talking point right now, is like, how good is any team against 2019 LSU?
Yeah, let's remember 2019 Joe Burrow. And yes, he's throwing to Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, and he's got Clyde Edwards-Helaire behind him. But don't forget, when Joe Burrow got in trouble, Joe Burrow was excellent at moving around within the pocket or escaping the pocket and making a throw. Mendoza can do that. Mendoza can also scramble if he has to, and you saw it against Oregon. But they're not perfect. And it's sort of like Rocky IV, which I still can't believe I'm comparing Indiana to freaking Ivan Drago. But when Paulie's like, he's bleeding, he's not a machine, he's a man. Like, you guys notice Indiana put the ball on the ground against Oregon. Do you notice who recovered all those fumbles? It was Indiana. Do you know how often? You know how often when you fumble and you recover it, the next time you fumble you recover it? It's completely random. Yeah, completely random.
Turnover luck is a fallacy. Yeah, the concept of turnover luck is not real.
Well, they're what did we say last time? I think we talked about turnovers and penalties with Indiana, how they don't hurt themselves, right? I think they're number 1 and number 2 in turnover margin in the country, and number 1, I think, in lack of penalties.
Yeah, Ross, let me tell you about the Miami Hurricanes and penalties.
Yeah. They almost blew that. I could have swore that Ole Miss was going to win that game after the back-to-back personal fouls in the fourth quarter of that Fiesta Bowl.
Late hit,
and the Ole Miss scored to go
God.
up. Yeah.
Well, there was a PI that
here it goes again.
Yeah, there's a PI that Ole Miss would like. Although I've assured a lot of Ole Miss people in my life, that might have been a blessing, because y'all might have gotten done up by Indiana. I like Miami's chances better than Ole Miss's.
Well, and also Miami with PI called or not called in the state of Arizona in high-stakes games, they might have been doing a no call. Just
was this
just throwing it out
was this
there.
the Hail Mary?
Andy, was that a generational?
No, Glenn Sharp against Ohio State in the national title game in the Fiesta Bowl after the 2002 season. So Miami took it on the chin. They got the business end of that one. But 4 dropped interceptions for the Canes in the Ole Miss game. If Fernando Mendoza happens to throw you a ball, Miami defenders, you better catch it.
Catch it. Yeah, it'd be good to catch it.
You better catch it.
Another chance. Yeah. 4, at least 4, maybe even 5 dropped interceptions. A couple of tip passes against Ole Miss, so they're going to have to get those. I'll answer Godfrey's question too, and it's going to be kind of the cliched response, but like, given how Indiana does not beat itself, you can't in any way beat yourself with penalties and turnovers. Right. And again, that's what Miami, as Godfrey mentioned, when it comes to penalties, they have not been the best on. So they really have to play disciplined football. And I'll agree with Andy, obviously. Carson has got to hit the ones deep to a couple of his receivers like Tony and is it Marion, the guy?
Keelan Marion can really burn.
Keelan Marion, yeah, he can burn really well. I mean, He had 3 huge catches in that last drive. And I think Godfrey has a question for me about Carson Beck. But like everybody keeps sort of waiting for Carson Beck in the playoffs to have that game that cost them the
Louisville
game
question
this year. Yeah.
Yeah, they kind of
which I think is fair, by the way.
For that,
Like,
given his track record, right? Even during the season.
I know what the question is now.
yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was about the story, which I've heard from a number of Georgia fans.
Yeah, so this is what I wanted to ask you. I was like, ask you one.
A few
how's
Georgia
it going
fans had something to say to Dennis Smith, the Miami general manager's comment, specific quote about how Carson was gosh, I forgot what exactly he said. A broken human being.
Man. Yeah.
And when it was run off, basically, and this is, he's his great story. So yeah, I heard from a few of the barking dogs.
Yeah, run off.
Well, we know he wasn't really welcome back because they were trying to recruit Fernando Mendoza.
Yeah, there was a little bit of over-recruiting going on. Yep,
Yeah.
I think that's right. Yeah.
There is going to be you know what? We've established the SEC might be in its feelings right now. There is one SEC fan base that is going to be cheering hard for the Hoosiers on Monday night.
Yeah.
Because
that's right.
We haven't really experienced this yet, as far as I know, where we see this in coaching all the time. Like I've probably invoked that 21, it's the 21 cycle. Yeah, the 21 cycle over and over again. It's like, who won? Brian Kelly or Notre Dame? Notre Dame won. Who won? Mario Cristobal or Oregon? Push, right? Who won? Lincoln Riley or Oklahoma? Push.
Oklahoma.
Like, who won? Carson Beck or Georgia? Carson Beck might win this one. This is the first. It feels like a coaching kind of like we're seeing acrimony towards portal players the way we did to coaches.
Joe Burrow did not win against Ohio State. Dwayne Haskins wound up being a really good quarterback at Ohio State and a first-round draft pick. Yeah.
Andy, I remember that 19 year and doing some work on like kind of beatish work or like beat writer type work where I was talking to Ohio State fans and stuff at the time, and there was not a level of acrimony about that. It was understood amongst Ohio State fans that we're an elite program. We're going to force really pressure-filled competitive situations on our roster, especially at the quarterback position, and we wish him the best. And I think a lot of people were probably kind of cheering him on because you remember he was being recruited really heavily by like Cincinnati and maybe he was going to go there. But like LSU put him in a national title position. Obviously, it worked out well for him. I don't remember any Ohio State fan cheering against LSU in that national championship run. There are a lot of Georgia fans who feel scorned, and some of this has to do maybe with the more existential angst of Georgia's offensive scheme, their coordinator, and the quarterback decisions that they've made over the last couple of years. Because if Carson Beck wins a national title, and I'm saying, Andy, if he wins the national title, not 1 TD, 3 INTs, 135 yards, and they win despite that, which that ain't happening. But like if he throws 4 touchdown passes and wins a national title, that's going to put a serious referendum on a lot of different things, roster building philosophy, but also Georgia's quarterback decision making.
It always comes back to Mike Bobo, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what we're talking about. It always comes back to Mike Bobo.
Ball.
Oh my God. All right. Guys, when we come back, there's another person who's become a central figure in this whole story. And it's amazing to me because we've long known this guy went to Indiana, but why is Mark Cuban now suddenly the person we're talking about? We'll talk about it when we come back. We're back at the College Football Enquirer, and before we talk about the now former host of Shark Tank, instead of watching Shark Tank on your smart television, just turn it on and find that Yahoo Sports Network icon and watch the College Football Enquirer. We know you like listening to it, but you can also watch us on your smart TV. Also, any device, phone, tablet, laptop, doesn't matter. Go to yahoosports.tv. That's yahoosports.tv, and you can watch all of the Yahoo Sports Network shows, including the College Football Enquirer. But Sharks, I've got a deal for you. I can't even gin up the level of enthusiasm that the contestants on Shark Tank use, because it's like they are like Wheel of Fortune contestants on crack. It is incredible. But Mark Cuban, you know him from Shark Tank, you know him from formerly owning the Dallas Mavericks, from selling broadcast.com in the early 2000s and becoming a billionaire. IU grad. Well, now it's come out, oh, he's funding the roster. And this is yet more angst about Indiana. And you guys mentioned earlier in the show about are they stealing signals? Well, now it's, they got a billionaire. That's the only reason why they're any good. Can we just stop with this? Can we please stop?
Gatekeeping. That's what it is. I'm not kidding. It's gatekeeping. It is just stretching for any possible thread to somehow justify a 2-year, not even national title run, like dominant ascension. And that's all it is. How in one breath can you complain about Mark Cuban and not find a sort of Mark Cuban adjacent person at your successful football program? Because if you're mad about this and you cheer for a team that has played in the college football playoff or the BCS or whatever, like, you have a Mark Cuban, whether you know it or not. Now, some are more present, and some are more singular.
Cody Campbell and Phil Knight are more
correct
known. Yeah.
Yes. There are some names at Ole Miss of the 4 teams that were in the final that are adjacent to that. Now they prefer to be a little bit quieter about what they do, but there are Mark Cubans everywhere. I need to emphasize that. And by the way, you want a Mark Cuban. I'm going to give you a quick example. Tillman Fertitta. Tillman Fertitta was responsible for Houston's push to get into the Big 12. He spent a ton of money on facilities. He spent a ton of money just sort of raw on the university and marketing, all of that stuff. They renovated the basketball arena. He was instrumental in getting a football campus stadium rebuilt. During the portal era, Tillman Fertitta has another check to write. I think he's also the ambassador to Italy right now, but he had another check to write, and that's to the Houston Rockets because he bought the Rockets. And so if you notice, Tillman Fertitta is not doing any kind of, to my knowledge, Mark Cuban NIL donations the way that you might have expected him to. So you want your money to be doing this. You want your guys to be stroking that check. And again, if you cheer for literally any team that is good at college football, your team has a Mark Cuban or Mark's Cuban plural. You like that one?
Right. Yeah. And
it's like attorneys general.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going for.
Texas Tech and Cody Campbell in the early years, Miami and John Ruiz, and Miami certainly got a few other.
What's funny is we're not even talking about John Ruiz anymore, and they're playing for the title.
Wallet.
That's right. Life Wallet, which I think was valued much lower than anticipated by John Ruiz years ago. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of schools that has that one person, if not 3 to 5, right? People that they rely on. Tennessee, right? We know Tennessee and the Haslam family and all of that. There's plenty of examples of that. Yeah, there's plenty of examples of that across the country.
Hey, Walmart's on the field. Walmart's on the field in Arkansas.
Walmart,
for a reason,
yeah, that's
guys.
another. That's another good one there.
Give me a break. Why are we mad about? Who's mad about Mark Cuban?
Well, it's interesting because Larry, let me throw some teams out here in this tournament: Alabama, Texas A&M, Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana. Of all those, do we think Indiana ranks 5th in roster spend? Because I think I would put them 5th in roster spend. Would be my guess.
Yes,
if I were looking at those 5 teams.
Yes, but this is all about context. This is about looking at a graph and looking at sorry, I'm doing a visual, and I know we have audio listeners, doing just a portion of the graph,
Yahoo
and then you pan out and you realize, yes, yeah, that's right. You got to watch us on show. I think that is true and correct, Andy. And we're all guessing, by the way, because we don't have these figures hard and fast, or Ross would have them. I do think they're
I don't know
spending
if
more.
anybody really has them. Yeah.
I don't even know. Sometimes I don't even know if the schools.
I'm not even sure some of these schools actually know how much they're spending.
No,
correct.
Right.
I think it's like a really bad accountant situation where it's just like a duff, like a grocery bag filled with receipts, and you're like, all right, here's 2023. Yes, they are spending less. Yes, we have established they're really freaking good at evaluation, and I think I'm hesitant to say that it's Moneyball. Because first off, that's overused as a trope now. They're spending a lot of money. I want to be clear. They didn't fall ass backwards.
And the amount, I would guess, this is just an educated guess, the amount they're spending for 2025 significantly higher than 2024. Because in 2024, I don't think the world knew who Elijah Surratt and Aiden Fisher
were. I think
so.
Yeah.
And then
And
they
they're
were
at
really
JMU.
good in 24, and they had to make sure they kept them in 25.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Yeah.
Andy, here's my answer. If you're a baseball fan, the Dodgers don't win the World Series every year, although it feels like it recently. Sometimes you have Toronto, or you have so I'm a Braves fan. We beat the Dodgers in 21 in the NLCS. I think it was $45 or $50 million between the budgets in 21, but the Braves were still number 8 in Major League Baseball in spending. This is what I'm getting at. Indiana is spending a lot of money. I just think when it comes to the what do they call it in the NBA, the top of the apron, they're just really smart compared to the others who are throwing cash. Maybe that's what I'm trying to get at. Because you're right. If you find 5 Elijah Surratts and lock them in, however the hell you do that contractually, you're going to not spend as much as you are getting guys at their peak. It's like NFL free agency.
Yeah. Build through the draft rather than the free agency, although in this case, the draft would be bringing guys from your FCS school, or not draft, your group of 5 school to your power conference school. But also, once they then prove themselves at the power conference level, pay to keep them, which is probably still cheaper in the long run. Like, let's say Carter Smith, their left tackle, had decided he wanted to go somewhere else or had left for the NFL. To go find that quality of left tackle in the portal would have been astronomically expensive.
Can I pose a question? It's like sometimes I feel like I'm accidentally giving Ross off-season assignments.
Oh. I need some more, please.
Go for it. You ready?
I'm busy enough, Godfrey.
You ready? You're only on the road 250. Those are rookie numbers.
Yeah, that's
you need to
right.
get that up, okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
There's no reason to be at home right now. You can sleep when you're dead.
I know, right?
Why? What is the honest answer? I want to know what, everybody said, what's the secret? What's the secret? They've retained assistants that we thought they would leave. They've retained players in the portal that probably could have made a little bit of an extra shekel or two in the portal. That, to me, is the thing that hasn't truly been answered yet. Because you can identify the Elijah Surratt, but then once you have the first Surratt season at the Big Ten school, you should then be pursued, tampered with, and maybe end up going to Texas Tech or a Georgia or whatever for top dollar. That has not occurred to Indiana. So that, to me, we focus so much on they can identify talent. Yes, but they're also retaining it, and they're not paying top market to do it. So I want to know why that's happening. That, to me, is a question that hasn't been answered.
That is a good question. And does it have something to do with a lot of these players having come over with Kirk Cinetti from JMU and just having a commitment sort of to him? Maybe. I mean, we don't see that as much in college football anymore, but maybe in this case there is sort of that feeling that he brought me right from one school to the other, and I'm going to stay here with him. I don't know.
But Ross, if that's the answer, which I think it's part of it, then would there not be some latent anxiety as we move towards 26 and beyond? Those guys are going to phase out of your program, and you're in the state of Indiana. So you're never going to be top 5 signing high school recruits. You're not in Florida, you're not in Texas, you're not in Georgia.
Right.
So if it's just loyalty, the assistant coach thing, I get that, right? You stick with it. You get paid by Indiana's also paying their coaches very well. I would point out it's I think I'm not saying it's necessarily when Clemson broke the $1 million and the $2 million mark with Venables and Chad Morris, but they're taking care of those guys, and so they're only going to leave for tip top jobs. But
they're paying them like SEC
standpoint,
and Big Ten schools that want to win. That's what they're paying.
His new
Cinetti's
new contract right last year was I think gave them a big salary pool. I feel like I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was pretty significant. I go back to when I visited there last November, so 14 months ago. I remember sitting down with their AD Scott Dolson in one of their big collective, the leader of their director of the collective, the NIL collective, and they were both talking about a year before that, so 2 years ago. Around now, they were, struggling in football. They had that really big high in 2020. They went was 6-2 or something, right? They were
very good COVID year. That was the
Bowl, I think.
Penix reaching out. Yeah, Penix reaching out for the goal line on the 2-point conversion against Penn State. Yeah.
And there was some hope that they could kind of stay there and sustain it, and they didn't. And when they didn't, I think there was a lot of it. I remember I was looking while Godfrey was talking for a quote from the NIL collective guy from my story, and he actually said they thought maybe we should just give up on football and focus on basketball. And I remember bringing that up to the athletic director, which is funny to think about the time, right? It's crazy. But I remember going from that interview to the athletic director, Scott Dolson, telling him that, right, bringing up that quote. And he said something to me that resonates, and I think resonated with a lot of people who read the story. And it's a quote about how they know the future in college athletics when it comes to the structure and the landscape is all about football. Like even at a basketball school, they were like, we understand it's all about football. And this was his quote. In the Big Ten, you need to be relevant in football to be a relevant member in your conference. We don't take that for granted that we're always a longstanding member of the Big Ten. We want to pay our fair share and be a valued member in football. And I remember that just sitting with me and a lot of other administrators who read that across the country, especially at basketball schools who were sort of having this dilemma, right, between football and supporting basketball. And I think everybody's realized, as important as basketball is, nothing will beat football right now.
No, that's just American. I mean, yeah, the market has dictated that beyond even college sports. Like the NBA can have a wildly successful season and still occupy a fraction of the revenue and mind share that the NFL will. We're a football country.
Yep. There you go. Football. Which rules?
Also,
it's a good sport.
If there's ever going to be a Super League, we'd like to be in it. And that is, can't just be a basketball school and be in a football Super League.
I had a lot of people ask me, and this is a little bit of a curve because we didn't discuss this before the show, but I'm a little punchy. Is there someone out there that it feels equally stupid to sort of speak right now as having Indiana style potential starting from an Indiana level? And you would think there is, but it also feels insane to say that because it was insane to say Indiana.
Because this is not the same as Indiana because this school has had more recent success than Indiana had pre-Signetti. But what about Duke? Like Mike Elko had 2 good seasons at Duke.
I mean,
they're investing. Manny Diaz comes in, has a good year, wins the ACC this year. Now, granted, they lost 5 games, but they won the ACC. But Duke is one that we always assumed is like, well, they're a football afterthought. Well, maybe not anymore.
That's a good example in their investment, especially in the quarterback. We talked about it, I think, on the show before. Wrote a story about that back in August. Is a good example of them sort of realizing they've got to shift a little bit more to football. Yeah, I think that in Vanderbilt. I mean, that's a good one, Godfrey, and your hometown.
Vanderbilt,
there.
Vanderbilt good at football and basketball now. So
yeah, it's true.
Yeah, boy, it makes you feel bad for Nebraska. You guys are doing it wrong. It's backwards. Do it the old way.
Shout out Fred Hoiberg though, kicking ass.
Yeah, they're on a roll.
I have literally no idea what you just said. That's fine. I'm like most
Nebraska ball is good. That's what we're saying.
Yeah, I know
they're undefeated. I think that's all I know.
Yeah. I mean, like there are programs that are on the rise. Like I like what Jake Dickert's doing at Wake Forest, but am I gonna go on a national show and say Wake Forest is going to be in the Final Four in 3 years? That seems insane.
I think it has to be
a couple of big donors. We talked about big donors, and Wake has a couple of big boys that have donated a lot of money.
If tobacco was, I'm just saying, tobacco money. Come on, guys. Everybody's vaping. I know you're going to cut off that.
I think it has to come from the SEC, the Big Ten. So, like Ross's alma mater.
Oh,
like if they,
I've got one.
Mississippi State. Okay, all right.
I got one. I'll throw this one out there and I'll live with it. Whatever. I like everything Kentucky's doing right now.
Oh, good example.
I Kentucky, like everything that Kentucky is doing right now.
Kentucky
from MMR. Speaking of MMR,
right?
There was JMI, not Playfly and Learfield, but their JMI deal. I can't remember what the numbers were, but it was one of the biggest MMR sort of long-term contracts in the history of college football.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing they have a few of these contracts out to athletes.
So we've talked on the show before that we don't have an active tree to model success off of, but we think Dan Lanning might be it, right? So we have a Dan Lanning offensive-minded assistant who's young, who's also, I think, by virtue of who he's following, has a chance to really rally some deep-pocketed individuals with just his natural enthusiasm because of the, let's call it, torpor that sort of infected that program for 2 or 3 years. I think you get there. So Kentucky's got a lot of coal money. It's got some horse money, and it's got a lot of ag money on the west side. And you could unite all that. I really think like basketball is almost sort of a blueprint here. They really rallied around Calipari and the ability to work the AAU system. The idea of bringing in transfers as one and dones would not be a foreign concept to this fan base. And I think that if you can galvanize that money, I really like the staff they put together too. Like it's young, it's dynamic, it's aggressive. I know some of those coaches. I think they could shake the rust off and carve out a spot for themselves. And if the playoff is, I don't know, 96 teams or whatever the hell it's going to be next year, then a 9-3 Kentucky feels like they've got a shot if they get into the tournament.
Well, and Kentucky being a border state to Indiana, like there's a lot of people at Kentucky, and I've talked to people about this over the last few weeks. There's a lot of people at Kentucky that are looking and have looked very closely at what happened in Indiana and saying exactly what you guys just said. If they can do this, we can do this. And they're going to try. I mean, part of the reason they fired Mark Stoops with the exorbitant amount of money that cost was they looked at Indiana and said, we're not dead. We don't have to be subject to this. We don't have to resign ourselves to this. And
because Stoops didn't take Stoops, he didn't agree to a lower amount. He just agreed to the structure, the payout. It wasn't 50 up front, right? 50% up front.
It was so it was 38. No, the original pay, the contract called for $38 million, 100% due within 60 days.
That's what it was. Yeah, and I was thinking the 50% is the Jimbo one. Yeah.
So the thing annual installments.
Yeah, the thing initially that I think we all heard individually in our conversations was doing the total upfront felt prohibitive. Then they started losing more. The Jimbo model was like something only A&M could absorb, where Jimbo's amount was 50% within 60
No,
days,
his was 25%. No, his was 25%. It was 21 million right off the bat, and then they paid the rest.
Where they could. Yeah. And they could swallow that and then absorb the rest as a line item. No one thought Kentucky could do that, but I think Stoops is, I guess he should be applauded. Like turning it into a line item, something they could pay off over a longer period of time, is allowing them to do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't know if you guys saw the Will Stein video. So obviously Oregon loses Friday night in the Peach Bowl. Will Stein puts out a video on Sunday. Is a walk and talk like Aaron Sorkin style through the Kentucky football complex, and you can just feel the excitement coming off of him. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. It's exactly, it's not Curt Cignetti getting up at the basketball game and saying Michigan sucks and Ohio State sucks and we're coming after them too, but it's a version of that. And I think that's we'll see if they can do it. But Indiana has just given everybody hope.
As good of a job that Mark did there, right? It did feel like the last couple of years or so, it got a little stale, and Will has seemed to bring it back to life. Will in some things that Mitch Barnhart has done with the JMI deal. I think that they're doing a lot with the multimedia rights partners when it comes to corporate sponsors and exceeding the cap. We've all seen the number thrown out there for basketball at Kentucky. I don't know how real that is, but it's around $22 million, I believe.
Ross, do you think there's a parallel with? Do you think there's some sort of parallel with corporate? Like, there seems to be a lot of potential in states where you don't have pro competition to have all the corporate dollars routed as, like, Kentucky basketball is essentially Kentucky's professional team, right? So I think when you talk about the corporate sponsorship and the ability to leverage these new MMRs, it feels like in a state like Kentucky, it's even easier and probably more incentivized to do it there, because all of the corporate spending that would go into sports can go directly into college.
Yeah, right. I think that's right. I think that is probably what we're looking at here. but some of these basketball schools, like Andy mentioned Duke earlier, Kansas, obviously Kentucky, it is going to be fascinating to see, because given the Learfield stuff that we talked about how, they're doing only 20% of a school's sponsorship budget to the athletes. Well, that's not going to be enough for some of these basketball and these big basketball powerhouses that want a much bigger roster. Where do athletic administrators decide to put that corporate sponsor money? Football or basketball? Or do they decide to kind of split it a little bit more? But then you're sort of going down the fence with this and not choosing one or the other. So it's really kind of complicated, and it's going to be fascinating to see how some of these powerhouses do this. Now, I will say one thing we haven't discussed in the world of rev share and all this MMR stuff and is apparel companies. And obviously in basketball, they've been a big part of the history, checkered sort of history of that. And they're a part of all this too. In fact, I think in the Brendan Sorsby ended up, obviously we've talked a lot about the Brendan Sorsby proposal from LSU, where he ended up going to Texas Tech. And I think Adidas, Texas Tech's big apparel sponsor, had a lot to do with his deal at Tech. I don't know that it'll ever see the light of day, but I believe they have a big portion of that.
Well, speaking of that company and the three stripes, do you guys know that this is the first Adidas on Adidas national championship game?
Ah, yeah, that's right. True.
Yeah, we were texting about this earlier, and I didn't know if I know it's the first of the playoff era. And then I was kind of racking my brain. I don't think it ever happened in the BCS era, and then figure out what defines a national title game before that. So I guess it is the first of its first ever, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And well, I mean, the pre-BCS, the schools didn't even have full-on deals. Like, for example, the first-time national champion, the Florida Gators in 1996, Nike shoes starter jerseys. So,
God bless.
It was a different time,
starter. I miss starter.
Different time. So,
and this is a great point, Andy, and dovetails to what we're talking about, because in this whole athlete compensation stuff that we've discussed, Adidas has been much more aggressive than its counterpart Nike in the way that they have been, let's say, flexible with schools when it comes to supporting athletes.
Yes.
They've been a lot more aggressive.
When your competitor has so much market share that they're always threatening to choke you out, that is what you have to do. And that's what Adidas has been throughout its history, essentially. Because Adidas, now obviously Adidas is a very healthy company based in Germany. Soccer, they're fine. But they want the American shoe and apparel market too. And Nike is a behemoth. And so the way you win hearts and minds is you get involved with players that matter. And so, they've been trying to do that. And we'll see how much more willing they are to invest when they can actually make deals with the players. Because, like, if you look at the Nike deals with players, it's actually not widespread. Like, you got to be really good, or you got to have a huge social media. Like, the Nike's more apt to pick a women's basketball player with a massive social media reach than a football player.
Well, I think it's two things. You touched on the first. I think Adidas has a lot of familiarity in this space, just obviously not in college football, because they were a soccer brand well before they were ever involved stateside. So they have a lot of experience dealing with superstar players driving the brand versus teams as brands. And the second is Adidas is hungrier and scrappier right now. From the people I talked to, I think, Nike just sat on the mountain. If you've seen the movie Air, it's almost the reverse of that story now. Whereas Nike was such a ridiculous underdog who had to fight so hard to get into basketball. As crazy as that sounds, if you're under the age of probably about 50, Nike was an afterthought with NBA stars coming out of college. And then Michael Jordan, of course, changed all that.
Waffle irons. So they didn't make basketball shoes.
Yeah. And Nike changed all of that sort of in one fell swoop by signing Michael Jordan. And, obviously we know what happened over the next 30, 40 years. Adidas has just been more aggressive and innovative in the space the last couple of years. I just think they're working harder.
Well, isn't it always the case, right? When you're the underdog, you have to work harder, right? And I think that, to your point, I think that's probably what's happening. And they're a little, Adidas, and I would say Playfly too. Again, Playfly is probably in the position that Adidas is in the MMR game, right? Because Learfield is sort of like the Nike, right? They have the most, they're the biggest, they have the most schools, and Playfly and Adidas are sort of the trying to work their way up to that level, and so they are both, I think, being a lot more aggressive in this space.
Well, we will watch a three-stripe team against a three-stripe team, Miami, Indiana, in the national championship game on Monday night. When we come back, this will be the culmination of a second 12-team national championship tournament. How many teams will be involved in the tournament next year? Ross Dellenger will provide an update. Welcome back to the College Football Enquirer, and we've talked about this national championship game, guys, but we need to talk about the tournament as a whole because the leagues have set a deadline, self-imposed a deadline of January 23rd to figure out a format for the 2026 season college football playoff. Ross Dellenger, how much has changed in terms of the rhetoric in the last few months since, we talked about it before the season, a little bit during the season? Is it still potentially headed towards 16? Would it stay at 12? Where are they at?
Yeah, I mean, not much has changed in the last several months, right? It's still, the Las Vegas meeting when I was out there about a month ago, the commissioners were out there. That was they left that meeting with sort of, you could maybe describe it as momentum to go towards 16. And there was momentum for 16 because 10 of the 11 board members on the CFP board, I think, were in support of going to 16 next year. But there was one that's 50% of the decision-making power in the Big Ten, and they want to go to 24. And so that's kind of where we've been now for really 2 or 3 or 4 months. Is you've got the Big Ten wanting to push a bigger field, a 2014 field with more AQs per single conference, more of an NFL style sort of model. And then you've got the SEC, which is the other big decision maker, because as we know, last year, all the leagues gave the SEC and the Big Ten the power to control format, so they have to agree. And the SEC wants to do more of an ease into expansion of 16 and keep the current structure where it's just 5 conference champions as AQs, and then they would be 11 at large. So we're still there. There's a compromise. I think I discussed it back in early December, and I wrote about it from Las Vegas. There's a compromise of, hey, do you just go for a couple years to 16 with the sort of expressed kind of promise that you will at least look seriously at a bigger field later? That'd be a compromise with the Big Ten to get on board. That's what they've been discussing most recently. And the way I've heard it is they're still at an impasse, right? They haven't come up with any agreement for any kind of guarantee later on to go bigger than 16. And if they don't do that, the Big Ten, I don't think, is going to agree to go to 16. So it's we'll see what happens, right? They got one more week or so, a little over a week. There's a big meeting Sunday in Miami. That's the big meeting of the college football the commissioners plus the CFP board, the presidents. Both meet for, their meeting's supposed to last around 4 hours on Sunday. So we'll see if they make any headway. I am not real optimistic. But
of any change? We'll, you're not optimistic that a consensus?
I'm not optimistic that the Big Ten is going to come around to the 16. I
think they should leave it at 12.
6 days.
Yeah, leave it at 12 and kill the idea of 24 with fire. Like, just be like, okay, we'll just stay at 12. Because 24 is absurd and stupid, and do not do it.
Yeah, 24 is terrible, definitely, in my personal opinion. But also, I'm curious why the Big Ten is going to die on the hill and not acquiesce, at least temporarily, to 16. If your ultimate goal is a larger expansion, if you want to double the field, Yeah. 16's closer to 24 than 12 is. So why are is it just about giving in to Sankey?
I'm not going to give you what you want.
There's a couple things here. It's a good question because it's like, well, if you want 24, 16 is like getting halfway there. Like, why would you not do that?
Yeah.
A couple things. Number one, the SEC has proven, based on the rankings the last few years, to be sort of deeper. And I think the thought is that if you have a big at-large pool and an 11-team at-large pool, then the SEC will have an advantage because they're sort of middle of the pack, has been more in that 12 to 18 ranking. So basically, I think there's a fear that the SEC, whether biased or not, or because they have a better middle section, although the bowl record didn't show that this year.
Yeah, that's where I was going to head with this.
That ranking, though, that's where they've kind of fallen. Like this past year, if it was 16, SEC would have got 7 teams in this past year. So last year, if it was 16, the SEC would have got 7 or 8 teams in.
It's a lot of first-round losses.
That is the Big Ten's fear, I think. So that's number one. Number two is just the structure. I think the Big Ten and Tony Petitti have been very clear about it. They think the selection committee is subjective, probably to the point I just was mentioning about the SEC and the rankings. And they think that you should have to earn it literal on the field based on conference standing and automatic qualifiers, just like the NFL kind of method is. So they want a smaller at-large pool and not a bigger one. So those two are, I would say, the main reasons why they wouldn't want to just jump boom to this 16 model.
I think my new bias is anything that gets a 4-loss Iowa team and 1 service academy in. It's like the John Mulaney joke about letting a horse loose in a hospital. Like, let's just see what happens.
Yeah, that's right.
I'd be fine if they just stayed at 12. I've enjoyed the 12.
Yeah.
I think the 12 seeded properly is a very entertaining tournament.
Yeah.
I'm fine with it. If they could just get the bowls out of the quarterfinals and hopefully out of the semifinals too, which I know they're not going to do, but it'd be nice if they did. Yeah. It'd be common sense. But
12's been great. 12's been great.
I think the 12 is a very entertaining product. So I don't really feel like they need to go to 16. So it's interesting because the Big Ten is going to think they're making everybody suffer to make them clamor for 24. They're not. The viewer's not going to be suffering. So all you're doing is screwing yourself out of potential at-large teams.
I think the rank and file fan would be okay with 4 or 5 more years of 12. I think the focus right now on outside of the industry is not the number, it's the procedure. After the Notre Dame incident, after increasing calls of the SEC bias in the selection process,
by the way,
right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the 5 highest ranked conference champions. It's going to be each of the 4 power leagues, their champion will be automatically in. So there's no possibility that 2 group of 5 champions or 1 group of 5 champion at least leaps over a power conference champion and gets in, like we saw happen this year with the ACC.
Yeah, because that was the problem.
Yeah. And then the Notre Dame thing. And the Notre Dame thing is really interesting. And Pete Bavacqua, the Notre Dame athletic director, will be in Miami. And I'm sure he's going to have some questions to answer there about Notre Dame's the new sort of rule starting next year, where Notre Dame is guaranteed a spot in the playoff if they finish in the top 12 of the rankings, which this year, if that were the case, Notre Dame would have got in instead of Miami.
So he's not going to get those questions from the other commissioners, is he? Because they all agreed to it.
They did. But here's another incentive to potentially change the format, right? Because the format, the MOU that everybody agreed to, which has that Notre Dame clause in it, is only good for a 14 or 12 team playoff. So if you go to 16, the MOU, though a lot of the tenets and the concepts will probably remain the same, there would be a little bit of a more open negotiation of some of these rules, including perhaps the Notre Dame one. I don't know.
And look, in that one, you could either make a deal with Notre Dame that says if they're in the top 16, they're in, or you just say, hey, take your chances and you're either in the top 15 and you're in or not. And I think Notre Dame would be okay with that. I think they'd be fine with that. But I just find it hilarious that these guys all agreed to this and then get reminded of it by you, Ross Dellenger. And they're like, wait a second. What's this witchcraft you Catholics are trying to pull? You agreed to it.
Well, at least your commissioner did.
Read it before you sign it next time, guys.
I know one thing that's not going to happen as we wrap up. We're not going to have any revision or reorganization of bloated power conferences and their dumbass methodology for choosing a champion, because that's what caused this problem, not James Madison.
I saw Manny Diaz at the coaches convention. By the way, the hair is more spectacular in person than it is on television.
His hair is great. All right, challenge accepted. I see how you are, Andy.
He would have been in the CFP, next year, like that. They would have been in. That'd have been guaranteed a spot. So, I do think what happened in the ACC this year probably never going to happen again. But yeah, everybody's going to freak out about it and probably change stuff anyway.
Maybe.
So that's college football. Like this totally random thing that happened that will probably never happen again. We're going to change everything anyway, just in case. College football, everybody. Hey, enjoy the national title game. We will talk to you after a national champion is crowned. We know one thing. They'll be wearing Adidas. Talk to you soon.
Adidas. Indiana's cheating, Paul.